The compulsion to explain yourself is a modern disease. We defend our choices to strangers, justify our boundaries to people who have already decided not to respect them, and spend hours crafting explanations for those who were never interested in understanding. We carry our justifications like shields, believing that if we can just find the right words, the perfect argument, the most compelling case, we will finally earn the respect we deserve. But respect earned through explanation is not respect at all. It is permission, grudgingly given and easily revoked. And in seeking it, we reveal the very thing that makes us unworthy of it, our doubt in ourselves. The Stoics discovered something that cuts through centuries of social conditioning. Respect is not won through words. It is commanded through presence. The person who must constantly explain themselves announces to the world that they do not trust their own judgment. The person who lives by clear principles and lets their actions speak needs no defense. Marcus Aurelius ruled an empire and wrote volumes of philosophy, yet nowhere in his meditations does he justify himself to his critics. Epictetus, born a slave, taught philosophy to the elite of Rome and never once explained away his humble origins. Seneca advised emperors and faced exile without issuing manifestos about his innocence. These men commanded respect not through elaborate justification, but through unwavering alignment between their values and their actions. What happens inside you when you feel the need to explain? There is a tightness in the chest, a racing of thoughts, a desperate mental scramble to construct the perfect defense. This physical response reveals something crucial. You have placed your sense of self-worth in someone else's hands. You have decided that their understanding matters more than your own clarity. You have submitted yourself to an external jury, and you are now performing for their judgment. This is the moment you lose your power. Not because explanation itself is weak, but because compulsive explanation reveals that you need their approval to feel secure in your choices. Our age has made this worse. Social media has turned every human being into a defendant in an endless trial. You post something, and within minutes, strangers demand you explain yourself. You make a choice, and the internet insists you justify it to thousands of people you will never meet. You set a boundary, and you are immediately asked to prove why you deserve to have limits. The algorithmic architecture of modern communication rewards those who can craft the most compelling defense, who can out-argue their critics, who can justify themselves into submission. And so we become addicted to explanation, training ourselves to believe that our worth is determined by our ability to convince others of it. But the Stoics lived in a different paradigm entirely. They understood that the wise person acts from reason and virtue, then moves on. If others understand, excellent. If they misunderstand, that too is outside your control and therefore not worth the expenditure of your peace. Epictetus taught that we are disturbed not by events themselves, but by our judgments about them. When someone misunderstands you and you feel compelled to explain, you are being disturbed not by their misunderstanding, but by your judgment that their understanding is necessary for your peace. Change the judgment, and the compulsion disappears. Consider what happens when you observe someone who never explains themselves. There is a weight to their presence, a gravity that comes from being centered in their own authority. When they make a decision, they make it. When they set a boundary, they set it. When they choose a path, they walk it. They may communicate clearly when communication serves a purpose, but they do not defend, do not justify, do not seek permission from the crowd. And paradoxically, this very refusal to explain commands more respect than any explanation ever could. People sense that they are in the presence of someone who knows themselves, who has done the internal work to align with their principles, who does not need external validation to confirm what they already know to be true. This is not about arrogance. The arrogant person explains constantly because their ego is fragile and needs perpetual reinforcement. This is about quiet confidence, the kind that comes from rigorous self-examination and commitment to virtue. The Stoic has interrogated their own motives, examined their reasoning from every angle, and aligned their actions with their deepest values. Having done this internal work, they have no need to perform it externally for an audience. Their clarity is their own, and whether others share it is ultimately irrelevant to its truth. Seneca wrote extensively about the tyranny of public opinion. He observed that most people are enslaved by the judgments of the crowd, twisting themselves into unnatural shapes, trying to please everyone while pleasing no one, least of all themselves. He advocated for living by an internal standard so rigorous that external criticism becomes meaningless. Not because you are dismissive of feedback, but because you have already subjected yourself to a harsher judgment than any critic could offer. When you hold yourself to the highest standard, when you examine your choices with brutal honesty, when you commit to virtue regardless of cost, the opinions of others lose their power to disturb you. You have already faced the only judge that matters, your own reason. The art of commanding respect begins with self-respect. You cannot command from others what you do not first give yourself. And self-respect means trusting your own judgment enough to act on it without requiring a chorus of voices to confirm it was right. It means being willing to be misunderstood, even vilified, while remaining anchored in your principles. It means understanding that respect based on understanding is shallow and temporary, while respect based on consistent character is deep and permanent. Think about the last time you felt compelled to explain yourself. What were you actually defending? Usually, it was not the choice itself, but your right to have made it. You were seeking permission retroactively, asking others to validate a decision you had already made. But this very act undermines the decision. It says, "I chose this, but I am not sure I had the authority to choose it. I acted, but I need you to tell me it was okay to act. I set this boundary, but I require your understanding before I feel entitled to maintain it." The Stoic would ask, if you do not trust your own authority to make choices about your own life, why should anyone else? The compulsion to explain often masks a deeper issue: unclear values. When you are genuinely aligned with your principles, when your choices flow naturally from deeply held convictions, explanation becomes unnecessary. You know why you did what you did. You know it was right according to your understanding of virtue. You know it was the best option available given the circumstances and your limitations. This internal certainty creates a kind of impermeability. Criticism slides off because you have already examined the choice more thoroughly than any external critic could. But when your values are murky, when you are not sure why you made a particular choice, when you acted from impulse or social pressure rather than principle, you feel vulnerable. And that vulnerability drives the compulsive need to explain, to construct after the fact a justification for what you could not justify to yourself beforehand. Marcus Aurelius practiced a morning meditation where he reminded himself that he would encounter people who were meddling, ungrateful, arrogant, dishonest, jealous, and unsociable. But he also reminded himself that these people acted from ignorance of what is good and what is evil. They could not harm his character unless he allowed it. They could not disturb his peace unless he granted them that power. This practice created a buffer between his actions and others' reactions. He did not need to explain himself to the ignorant because their misunderstanding stemmed from their own lack of wisdom, not from any deficiency in his choices. He remained open to genuine dialogue with the wise, but he did not waste energy defending himself to those committed to misunderstanding. This distinction is crucial. The Stoic art of commanding respect does not mean you never communicate your reasoning. It means you discern between productive dialogue and defensive justification. Productive dialogue happens when both parties are genuinely seeking truth, when there is mutual respect and openness to being wrong. In such exchanges, explaining your reasoning serves the pursuit of wisdom. Defensive justification happens when you are trying to convince someone who has already made up their mind, when you are seeking validation rather than truth, when the conversation is really a performance for an audience rather than a genuine exchange. The Stoic engages in the first and walks away from the second. How do you develop this discernment? Through practice and through ruthless honesty about your own motives. Before you explain yourself, pause. Ask, am I explaining because this person genuinely wants to understand and our relationship would benefit from clarity? Or am I explaining because I need their approval, because I am afraid of their judgment, because I cannot bear to be misunderstood? The first motivation leads to communication that strengthens connection. The second leads to the erosion of respect, yours and theirs. There is a particular test that reveals whether you have internalized this wisdom. When someone misunderstands you and you feel no need to correct them, you have arrived at Stoic indifference to external opinion. Not because you do not care about truth, but because you understand that their understanding is outside your control and therefore not a legitimate source of disturbance. You can offer clarity if the situation warrants it, but you are not attached to whether they receive it. Your peace does not depend on their comprehension. This is freedom. Epictetus taught through the metaphor of roles. You have been assigned certain roles in life. Perhaps a parent, a professional, a friend, a citizen. Your job is to play these roles with excellence, according to virtue, to the best of your ability. You are not responsible for whether others appreciate your performance. You are not required to explain why you interpret your role the way you do. You simply show up, execute your responsibilities with integrity, and release attachment to the results. The parent who must constantly justify their parenting decisions to extended family members has lost sight of their role. They are parenting for an audience rather than for the child. The professional who endlessly defends their methods to colleagues who will never be satisfied has forgotten that excellence is its own justification. Respect flows naturally to those who respect themselves enough to stop seeking it. This is the paradox at the heart of the Stoic teaching. When you are desperate for respect, you repel it. You appear weak, uncertain, easily swayed. But when you are grounded in your own authority, when you make decisions from clear principles and stand by them regardless of others' reactions, respect comes unbidden. People recognize strength even when they disagree with your choices. They sense that you have done the internal work, that you are not performing or posturing, that you would make the same choice whether they were watching or not. The world will constantly invite you to explain yourself. Every boundary you set will be questioned. Every unconventional choice will be challenged. Every time you prioritize your values over social expectations, someone will demand justification. The Stoic response is not defiance or rudeness. It is simply groundedness. You can acknowledge the question with a simple statement, "This is my choice." You can offer brief clarity if the relationship warrants it. "I have decided this based on my values." But you do not engage in the endless back and forth, the defensive spiral, the exhausting attempt to convince those who do not wish to be convinced. There is profound peace in this way of living. Imagine moving through your days without the constant background anxiety of whether you have adequately justified yourself. Imagine making choices and simply living with them, trusting your reasoning, adjusting if you learn something new, but not requiring a panel of judges to approve each decision. Imagine setting boundaries and maintaining them without guilt, without the compulsive need to make others understand why you deserve to have limits. This is what the Stoics offer: liberation from the tyranny of explanation. But this practice requires something difficult: tolerance for being misunderstood. Most of us have been trained since childhood to believe that being misunderstood is a crisis that must be immediately resolved. We learned that we must make people understand us, that we must clear up confusion, that we must ensure everyone has the correct perception of our intentions. This training serves social cohesion in some contexts, but it becomes a prison when we apply it indiscriminately. The Stoic develops the capacity to let misunderstanding exist without needing to fix it. This does not mean you become careless about how your actions affect others. It means you distinguish between genuine harm that requires repair and simple misunderstanding that requires only patience. Seneca faced constant criticism during his time as Nero's advisor. People accused him of hypocrisy for preaching Stoic simplicity while accumulating wealth. They questioned his motives, his character, his right to teach philosophy while serving a tyrant. He could have spent his entire life defending himself, crafting elaborate explanations, trying to make everyone understand the complexity of his position. Instead, he wrote philosophy, acted according to his best judgment of how to moderate Nero's worst impulses, and accepted that many would never understand or approve. He lived with the tension, and in doing so, he commanded far more respect than any explanation could have earned him. History remembers him not for his defenses, but for his wisdom. The art of commanding respect through non-explanation has several practical applications. In relationships, it means you communicate your needs clearly once, perhaps twice if the situation is genuinely complex, and then you maintain your boundaries regardless of whether the other person agrees with them. You do not enter into negotiations about whether your needs are legitimate. You do not defend your right to have limits. You state them, you honor them, and you allow the relationship to either accommodate them or end. This is not cruelty. This is respect for yourself and, paradoxically, respect for the other person. You trust them to make their own choices about whether they can meet you where you are, rather than manipulating them through guilt or endless justification. In professional contexts, it means you do excellent work and let the work speak for itself. You do not send follow-up emails explaining why you made particular choices unless asked. You do not defend your methods to colleagues who are invested in misunderstanding you. You focus your energy on execution rather than justification. When feedback comes, you evaluate it on its merits. If it is wise, you integrate it. If it is not, you let it go. But you do not engage in the office politics of constant self-defense. This posture often leads to being underestimated initially, but over time, consistent results command respect that no amount of explanation ever could. In social situations, it means you make choices that align with your values even when they diverge from group norms, and you do not apologize or justify endlessly. You leave the party early if you are tired, and you do not spend 20 minutes explaining why. You decline invitations that do not serve you, and you do not offer elaborate excuses. You live according to your own rhythm, and you trust that those who truly respect you will respect your choices even when they do not fully understand them. The friendships that survive this honesty are deeper and more genuine than those built on constant accommodation and explanation. But what about when you are actually wrong? What about when your choice was misguided, when your reasoning was flawed, when you caused genuine harm? The Stoic response is not stubborn refusal to acknowledge error. It is taking full responsibility without defensive explanation. When you have erred, you say, "I was wrong. I understand the harm I caused. I commit to doing better." You do not offer a list of extenuating circumstances trying to make others understand why you made the mistake. You own it cleanly, learn from it, and move forward. This kind of accountability, stripped of defensive explanation, commands profound respect because it is so rare. Most people, when wrong, launch into elaborate justifications trying to spread the blame. The Stoic simply says, "I failed. I will improve," and then does so. Marcus Aurelius wrote that the best revenge is not to be like your enemy. When others demand endless explanations, when they try to pull you into defensive spirals, when they refuse to grant you the autonomy to make your own choices, the best response is not to meet their energy. It is to remain grounded in your own authority. You do not owe anyone a justification for living according to your principles. You do not need permission to be who you are. You do not require their understanding to proceed with integrity. This steadiness, this refusal to be drawn into the chaos of constant explanation, is what commands respect. The practice is simple but not easy. Each time you feel the urge to explain, pause. Breathe. Ask yourself, does this explanation serve truth and genuine connection, or does it serve my ego's need for validation? If it serves truth, offer it clearly and concisely. If it serves ego, let it go. Practice this hundreds of times, in small moments and large ones. Practice in low-stakes situations so the muscle is strong when high-stakes moments arrive. Practice until the pause becomes automatic, until you can feel the difference between helpful communication and defensive justification in your body. Over time, something shifts. The people in your life adjust to your new way of being. The ones who were feeding on your explanations, who enjoyed keeping you in a defensive posture, either learn to respect your boundaries or drift away. The ones who genuinely care about you learn to trust that you have reasons for your choices even when you do not articulate them. New people enter your life and they never know you as someone who explains compulsively, so they treat you with the respect that comes naturally to those who respect themselves. You build a life where your worth is not constantly on trial, where your choices are yours to make, where misunderstanding is uncomfortable but not catastrophic. This does not mean you become isolated or impossible to know. In fact, the opposite often happens. When you stop using explanation as a shield, you create space for genuine intimacy. You can be vulnerable without being defensive. You can share your reasoning when it serves connection, without needing the other person to validate it. You can disagree without needing to convince. You can be fully yourself because you are no longer performing for approval. This authentic presence draws people in far more effectively than any amount of justification ever could. The Stoic art of commanding respect is ultimately about living from the inside out rather than the outside in. Most people live reactively, constantly adjusting themselves based on external feedback, defending against criticism, seeking approval from the crowd. The Stoic lives from a core set of principles, makes choices based on those principles, and allows the external world to react however it will. This requires deep work. You must know what you value. You must interrogate your motivations ruthlessly. You must be willing to be wrong and adjust when necessary. But having done this work, you earn the right to stop explaining yourself to those who have not done their own. Epictetus was asked once how to respond to insults. His answer was characteristically direct: by not caring about them. The insult only has power if you grant it significance. If someone misunderstands you, calls you names, questions your motives, and you feel no need to defend because you know your own character, what power does the insult have? It is simply noise, the opinion of someone operating from ignorance. You can acknowledge it if it contains a kernel of truth worth examining, but you do not waste energy fighting it. Your energy is precious. Spend it on virtue, on self-improvement, on meaningful work, not on convincing people who have already decided what they think of you. As we close this exploration, understand that commanding respect through non-explanation is a lifelong practice, not a destination. There will be moments when you slip back into old patterns, when you find yourself in a defensive spiral before you catch yourself. The Stoic response to these moments is gentle self-correction. You notice what happened, you understand the pattern that was activated, and you recommit to living from your center. You do not berate yourself for the slip. You simply return to your practice. Each morning, You can set an intention. Today, I will trust my own judgment. Today, I will communicate clearly when communication serves truth, but I will not defend myself to those committed to misunderstanding. Today, I will command respect through aligned action rather than elaborate explanation. This daily recommitment slowly rewires your default responses. The compulsion to explain begins to feel foreign, like a coat that no longer fits. The peace of self-trust begins to feel natural, like coming home. The world needs fewer explainers and more examples. It needs fewer people defending their right to exist and more people living courageously according to their principles. It needs fewer performances and more presence. When you stop explaining yourself and start embodying your values, you give others permission to do the same. You show them that it is possible to live with integrity even when misunderstood, to maintain boundaries even when questioned, to command respect even without demanding it. Marcus Aurelius faced criticism from all sides, from senators who thought him too philosophical, from generals who thought him too hesitant, from citizens who thought him too remote. He could have spent his reign explaining himself, justifying every decision, trying to make everyone understand his reasoning. Instead, he governed according to his principles, wrote his meditations for himself rather than for public consumption, and allowed his actions to speak. History judges him as one of the greatest emperors precisely because he did not waste energy seeking approval from his contemporaries. He focused on being good rather than being understood. You have the same choice in your own life, on a different scale but with the same fundamental dynamics. You can spend your days explaining, defending, justifying, performing for an audience that will never be satisfied. Or you can do the internal work to align with your principles, make choices from that alignment, and let the explanations fall away. You can trust yourself enough to stop seeking permission. You can respect yourself enough to stop defending your right to exist as you are. You can live with such integrity that respect comes naturally, without being chased. The Stoic art of commanding respect is not a manipulation tactic or a power play. It is the natural result of self-knowledge, self-trust, and unwavering commitment to virtue. It is what happens when you stop performing and start being. It is the peace that comes from knowing that your worth is not determined by others' understanding of it. It is the strength that comes from being willing to be misunderstood rather than compromise your principles. It is the freedom that comes from releasing the exhausting burden of constant explanation. Stop explaining yourself. Start living with such clarity and integrity that explanation becomes unnecessary. Let your actions speak. Let your consistency speak. Let your character speak. And watch how respect flows naturally to those who respect themselves enough to trust their own judgment. The Stoics proved this truth across centuries and circumstances. Now it is your turn to practice it in your own life, in your own way, until the compulsion to explain is replaced by the quiet confidence of knowing yourself. If this resonates with you, if you are ready to stop defending and start living, subscribe and continue this journey. The path of self-mastery is walked alone, but we walk it together in spirit. The Stoics wait with their wisdom, ready to guide those brave enough to trust themselves over the crowd, those willing to command respect through presence rather than explanation, those committed to living from their deepest values regardless of who understands.